In this video, I'm going to explain what exactly it is you want to be feeling when you do your dynamic stretches, or in other words, how do you know that you're doing them right? For those of you who don't know me, my name is Maryke. I'm one of the physiotherapists from sportsinjuryphysio.com, where you can get online physiotherapy assessment as well as treatment for your injuries. Have a look at the description of this video if you want a link to our website. So if you want to know if you're doing your dynamic stretches correctly, you've got to think about what is it that you actually want to achieve through them. Well, there are two main things. One is that you want to get your range of motion that you need for your sport so that your limbs can move in the way freely without restriction as you need them to move. And second, you want to wake up your muscles and get them ready to contract at the best that they can. Now, if you want more detail on how this actually happens, I've made a full video where I go into the benefits of dynamic stretches and when you do it before sport, after sport, that type of thing. So have a look at the description of this video if you want a link to that one. Now, to get your full range of motion, you've got to think of the movements you use in your sport and you want to move your limbs through that full range. But you also want to build up to it. You can't just go boom into the fullest range that you try to do. You'll pull something. You've got to warm it up in the easier ranges first, and I'll demonstrate it in a minute what I mean with this, and then go through the full range. And then two, you want to contract the muscles that you're actually going to use for your sport. So if we think of running sports, for instance, that would be your quads, your calves, your hamstrings, and your glutes are the main ones. Of course, arms and things also play a role, but not as much as if you were a swimmer, you'd be focusing a lot on what the upper body does as well. So the main points here is think about the movement patterns you're going to use in your sport. Choose your dynamic stretches according to that. Second, build up so that you eventually go through the full range. Third, get those muscles to contract that needs to work, but don't do too many of these movements because otherwise you'll actually make them tired. And slowly move into the full range. So you start with more controlled things and then you get to the wilder actions as everything has warmed up. So let's take a look at what this would look like for somebody who does a running type sport. The most common movement there is forwards and backwards. So you've got to be able to lift your leg up forwards, stretch your leg out, come through, take your weight, do a squatty type movement and push forwards, and then that leg's going to go back. If you're doing football or stuff, you'll have to do side-to-side maneuvers and things as well. But let's just take it for straight running. What joints are we moving? We're moving the hips, we're moving the knees, and we're moving the ankles. So we want to start by loosening that off. And the easiest thing for that pattern are just free squats. And you go to where you feel a restriction coming on. So we're not going to where you feel a strong stretch. You just want to touch onto the restriction to start with, because we're going to, by moving it several times in and out of that, we're feeding the joints, we're getting things lubricated, and we're warming it up. And you'll find that after a while, actually, you can go a little bit lower if you want. But you never force it. You just go to where you feel a gentle stretch and come back up. Then, the step up from that, or stronger one, let me just get this out of the way for us. A stronger one to do is after you've done that a bit, you can go into split squats. This is not the first one I would do because I may be too tight and stiff, especially if I've sat the whole day to get into this position. So then from here, we can now come down and dip down. And we're stretching the quads, we're stretching the hip flexors, we're contracting the bum. We're also contracting the quads and the hip flexors as we come up. We're also stretching the hamstrings on the opposite, the bum on the opposite, and working the quads on this side, waking it up. So you can see that it's all in one really nice exercise for everything. You're even getting a little bit of a calf stretch depending on how you do it. So how far do you dip down? Again, you dip down to where you can feel a bit of a stretch going on, but not overly strong. And you hold it for about, so how long do you hold it for? You don't want it to switch off, you want it to activate. There's no evidence for what the best short period of hold is to activate it. All evidence we have is that if you hold it for longer than 40 seconds to a minute, I think, that it actually switches off and it puts the muscles to sleep. So about 5 seconds, even if you want to stay there for 5 seconds, you could. But usually I just end up dipping in, pausing for a moment, coming back up. And how many repetitions you do depends on your fitness. Now you can hear, I'm not used to talking while doing this. Because if you do too many and you get too tired, the evidence shows that actually your performance decreases. but you obviously want to do it on both sides. So now we've really given the hip flexors a good stretch with that, little bit of a hamstrings and glutes. So let's add another one in for this forward pattern, because we want to be able to swing our legs through without restriction. Nice one for that is just a good morning movement. So in this movement, we're stretching the hamstrings really, little bit of the bum, but we're also contracting the back muscles, and as we come up, the bum muscles and the hamstrings. And then you can squeeze your bum to just get your hip flexors stretched a bit, but be careful that you don't just end up overextending your back. So then you do about 10 repetitions of that, depending on how tight you are. If you start off there and you're really tight, you may want to do it until you feel, okay, they're relaxing quite nicely now. And then the step up from that is that we can go into faster things then and really get that last bit of range of motion by swinging the leg, where we stretch the hamstrings, glutes, stretch the front hip flexors going back, and of course as you come forwards, they've got to work to pull you forwards, they've got to work to bring you back, and it's best to hold on to somebody that you don't fall over. So to summarize, you never force a movement. You start with movements that's less stretchy, less severe, just warm things up there to get everything lubricated. Then you go into the stronger stretches, but again, you don't force it into a strong stretch. You just go to where you feel a bit of a resistance, kind of like you would tell somebody with a passive stretch that you stop where you start feeling the stretch, and you just move in and out of that position gently. There's no right or wrong for how long you want to hold it, but usually I wouldn't hold it for longer than 5 seconds, because then it becomes like a isometric contraction there really. So I would go for less than 5 seconds, and yeah, choose the movement patterns that's right for you. Brilliant, hope you found that useful. Now remember, if you need more help with an injury, you're welcome to consult one of the team via video call. The link to the website is in the description of this video. Take care.